Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Halton Hills housing update. So a little bit of good news, but still kind of not great updates happening overall. So looking at what happened last week, we actually had a really strong sales week in Georgetown. We had 14 properties sell. Half of them were over that million mark. So we did see some of our bigger ticket stuff moving last week, and 14 is a really strong week for Georgetown. So maybe our buyer activity is coming back. It's not, obviously it's like a one of week, but it's promising compared to where we've been the last few weeks. The bad news is that our listings are still outpacing our sales. So we had 17 new listings in Georgetown last week. We are still seeing a ton of inventory hitting the market across the board. So now looking at our other markets, we didn't see any sales anywhere else. So Acton had no sales, but they had 10 new listings. Acton is getting absolutely hammered with new listings, and their inventory has just completely skyrocketed. In Glen Williams, there was no sales, but 2 new listings, and the rural market, no sales, and 5 new listings. So the rural market is also seeing an uptick on listings coming on. So when we're looking at properties that like terminated, expired, adjusted their prices, etc., we had 22 properties that were impacted. 8 of them came off the market, which helped to keep Georgetown's inventory at bay this week. That was a big part in that. And we had 13 properties that relisted at a lower price. So we're seeing lots of people adjusting their pricing downward. And we had 1 property that raised their price. So we are starting to see offer nights not working and people relisting higher. It's hard to believe that, I mean, it happened really fast where our inventory levels spiked, but to have offer nights when inventory levels are what they currently are seems crazy. It's still working for the odd thing, but that should start trickling out with where our inventory levels are. But I will talk in a little bit. Most of the stuff that's holding off offers is in that under million price point, which still isn't super saturated, but it's still just, it just doesn't feel like it's the market where we should be seeing that right now, but we'll see if that washes out. But like I said, the last few weeks, we have seen quite a few properties that had failed offer nights and then relisted their properties at a higher price, like market value, more where they want to see their properties sell. So I think that will be a trend that we continue to see. Rolling into where our active inventory is, all of Halton Hills is up from 219 to 230 active listings. We are almost at our all-time high in terms of listings, which was 232. So I suspect next week we are going to, you know, officially just kind of like crush that. Last year when we hit the 232, I was like, we'll never see this again. Like, I really did not think this is where we would be, especially in an April. So this is a bit crazy. So looking at Georgetown this week, they're actually down from 134 to 132 active listings. And like I said, you know, we had 14 sales, 17 new listings, so it was pretty close, but we had a bunch of properties that exited the market. So that helped to actually bring our inventory down. When properties exit the market, it helps to keep things kind of balanced, but that's not really happening in the other markets. So Georgetown this week is actually down slightly, but still 132 is like crazy. We were at 99 listings on March 18th. So in less than a month, our inventory has gone from like double digits into almost our highs, which is around 140. So it's still not great news. So looking at price points, under 800,000 is up from 13 to 15 active listings. 800 to a million is down slightly from 29 to 28 active listings. 1 to 1.5 million is down from 56 to 55 active listings, and 1.5 million plus is down from 35 to 34 active listings. So we are like getting some adjustments. We're starting to see some lower price point stuff hitting the market, but I'm going to talk a lot more about that near the end because it's really interesting when I kind of break down what's happening with our price points in the market. So now looking at Acton, Acton is up from 25 to 32 active listings. This is a crazy high inventory level for Acton, and we are not seeing really any sales coming in through Acton. So not great news for sellers there. It is certainly a buyer's market. There are some really sweet properties on the market there, but no one is pulling the trigger. So it will be interesting to see if, you know, prices really start to come down in Acton. Glen Williams is up from 11 to 13 active listings, which is crazy high for the Glen. And the rural market is up from 49 to 53 active listings. So like, the theme is that inventory is just climbing. And at least with Georgetown, we know that every week we consistently see sales there. In our other markets, we don't consistently see sales, especially because most of them are higher prices. So the inventory is just piling on in those markets. So one thing I looked at this week is sort of our overall inventory and our pocket of pricing. So we have 230 active listings in Halton Hills, and of those 230, 70% of them are over $1 million. So we only have 69 listings of the 230 that sit under that million mark. And so there's not a massive saturation in the grand scheme of where the market is for those under $1 million properties yet. But if you are $1 million plus, it is a real situation. And then it's almost split. So about half of that inventory, the remaining inventory, is between 1 and 1.5, and then another half, so 35% sits between 1 and 1.5, and then 1.5 plus has the other 35% of the market. So there is a ton of inventory over $1 million, and it was good in Georgetown this week because we saw a bunch of sales in that pocket, but the rural market and our outlying markets really struggle to move those higher price points. And so it is just not a great time. If you have a lower price point property, you may still be, in luck that we're not feeling the piling on of inventory. And like I said, those properties under $1 million, we're still seeing some people holding off offers and using that strategy. But over $1 million, it is just not working. Like, people just are not biting, and there's just not the buying pool that people need. So overall this week, I'd say the fact that we saw 14 sales in Georgetown is a really positive week. That's a very strong week. It's stronger than normal. So to have that, it could be a blip, or it could just be showing the trend that buyers are returning, and open houses have been busy, and it's been okay in Georgetown. It feels like busier-ish. So hopefully that can start to trickle into our other markets. And then hopefully as the lower price point stuff starts to sell, we can start to see some of our upper price points moving. But we're going to be watching this. It hasn't been a great update for the last few weeks. I mean, last week's was terrible, but this week is like, I don't know, we'll call it a middle ground. And just like, hopefully some of those properties just keep exiting the market to help keep our inventory like down. But I do think next week we might be at our all-time high in terms of active inventory in Halton Hills, which is too bad. It was so promising in January, but we really are in for an interesting year this year. So I will be back next week to see what happens. Have a great week, everyone.